I'm Craig Kenneth, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Every relationship is different and every breakup is different. Work with me and you'll get professional help on your situation. And if you're in no contact focused on personal growth, my Knowledge Workbook series and Creative Healing course can help you make changes like you've never made before. Available now at AskCraig.net. Hi there, I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking to you about why avoidants ghost you.
Man, this can be such a treacherous experience.
Yeah, obviously, I think most people know what ghosting is. I think it's a fairly common term now. If you don't know what it is, it's basically when you're dating somebody, you're talking to somebody, and they kind of disappear on you. They vanish like a ghost might.
Right, and it can be a really confusing and hurtful situation because a lot of times there's no context to it, right? A person doesn't say, I'm not responding because of these reasons or that reasons. You're just left to your own devices to figure out why, and a lot of times we as human beings, we end up blaming ourselves.
Yeah, and I think women may blame themselves more than men tend to do, but you can see that a lot of people beat themselves up. And we take it so personally, and we feel like it has to do with our value, but in many cases, it has more to do with them and their issues than anything that you've done.
Right, and you have to think about it. You know, for this person to be direct and clear with you, it costs them something. And it's something that they cannot afford, right, with the current skills set that they have. And so you have to think about it from that viewpoint. What causes somebody to just not say anything and cut ties in that way instead of being clear and direct? Now you have to think about, for the avoidant attachment style, a lot of times love was very painful for them. A lot of times they might have been in situations where they were neglected, their needs weren't met, their emotional needs weren't met, because sometimes you can have overbearing parents, right? You think, well, my parents were there for everything and they always told me what to do and looked after me. But sometimes that parent could be too smothering but not caring for your emotional needs. So that leads to a very confusing dynamic too. And so if they let somebody get close to them, that can trigger a lot of fear in them because love hasn't felt safe.
Yep. Love is painful to them. And one of my favorite quotes by Freud is that, how does he say it? We are never so hopeless or so vulnerable as to when we love, and so hopelessly unhappy when we lose the object of our love. And so, meaning that when we allow ourselves to love and get close to somebody, there's a very real threat of feeling an immense amount of pain and heartbreak and vulnerability that somebody could abandon you. And the pain of that, we all know it. You know it right now.
Yeah, and you have to think about vulnerability from the lens of a small child, right? Imagine when you're growing up, you're depending on your parents for consistent love, affection, guidance in life, right? Nobody is more vulnerable in this world really than a baby.
Yep.
They're completely helpless and dependent on their parent. And so when we don't get those needs met, a lot of times it can be traumatic. It can leave that kind of a lasting impact on us, and that trauma lives in our mind. We end up repeating it in a lot of our relationships where we continue to be vulnerable in the same ways.
Margaret used to describe trauma as being in this like timeless bubble in our unconscious, and it's kind of just floating there. And one of the things that talking about it and working through it does is kind of nails it down. And so when we can put a timeline to it, it helps us process it. That's why one of the big activities in the Creative Healing course is the story of our life. 40 pages to go over the story of your life so you can nail down the traumas and things that you've been through, so it makes you aware, wow, okay, that happened in my life 20 years ago. And it makes us feel a little bit safer in the present.
Right. Now, you might be confused as to how somebody can ghost you, especially when they were so affectionate and loving in the beginning. This really makes you scratch your head. It really makes you think, well, why would they do that? I never thought in a million years they would do that. And sometimes they even say that they won't do that. And that's what hurts the most.
Yeah.
You said you would never ghost me, but
I will
here
never do that to you.
Yeah. So this can be really, really frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, those who are more avoidant, they tend to come on strong, right? For them, very ironically, it can be much easier to be vulnerable with somebody that they are not so close to or attached with, because, you know, that's very different from being vulnerable from somebody who truly knows you up and down, knows your flaws, knows your strengths, right? It's very different when you know that person is going to be consistent in your life and really be able to see you over time.
Yep.
And so when you're just getting to know somebody, sometimes it can be easy to just pour that affection on them. A lot of times, those who are avoidants, they will want lofty relationship goals, right?
Yes.
They'll want to get married.
I want to
they'll
marry
have
you.
kids.
I could have kids with you. I want to spend my life with you. And it's like we've known each other for 3 weeks.
Yeah. And it can be confusing because this is not very fitting into that box, what we typically think of avoidance as aloof. And, you know, in the beginning, they can come on strong, and this can be very jarring. But over time, this can overwhelm them. We often see that those who are more avoidant tend to bite off more than they can chew, right? They make these promises, they invest, and then they freak themselves out because they realize, oh my gosh, I've overshared.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I'm actually getting to know this person on a deeper level. This is going somewhere. I need to be consistently vulnerable like this. I don't know if I can do that.
The idea of it feels great, right? They haven't had this closeness and connection for so long that when they meet somebody that they're attracted to and they feel it, it feels great and wonderful and amazing. They want it, they want it, they want it. But then they actually get it, and it's very different. And now, and this is huge, they feel trapped. And the crazy thing is you're thinking, but it was their idea. Yeah, it probably was in many cases. They in a way, push for these things and they get it and they're like, oh my God, what have I done?
Yeah. And you might be asking, like, how does this relate to the ghosting? We are going to tell you. They overwhelm themselves to the point where they shut down. And I don't mean to excuse all ghosting behaviors as, you know, somebody shutting down or dissociating. We don't know what's going on their end. However, it's important to understand just some of the dynamics at play. It doesn't make it okay. It feels really crappy to be ghosted, and it's not something that I think really anybody deserves.
Yep.
It's nice to just kind of have a clear message of what's going on so the other person doesn't, you know, end up blaming themselves, to be as clear as possible, but these things do happen.
Yep.
And so somebody feeling engulfed could be a reason that they ghost you. They feel
It's
that
huge.
kind of a pressure, and they don't know what to do besides bolt, besides run, because that's all they've really ever known.
Yep. I think engulfment and that feeling of being trapped is probably the biggest reason that an avoidant runs. Now, there can be others, but a lot of times they were dating an anxious person who wants a lot of their time, who takes them out of their routine, that normally they were like, this is what my routine is, this is what my day like, this is what I get to spend time with my friends and my weekends and this and that. And now all of a sudden I have to give that up? I have to sacrifice? You're telling me you don't want me to go to the movies with my friends? And you're jealous of the female friend that I have that I'm not even interested in? So now all of a sudden they're not liking this. And they're like, my life is is in this uproar. I thought I just got to love you and be this person that I was when I met you. But you want me to change all these things because you're afraid I'm going to cheat, or you need more time than me that I want to give. And it feels like an invasion of space. And it feels like, oh my gosh, I have to sacrifice everything for this person.
Right. And that, not even to mention, some people genuinely lack the communication skills. Right? It can be hard to piece together what to say. And I've spoken with many people, even more on a clinical therapy side, where they literally tell me, I don't know what to say in these kind of situations. A lot of people with more avoidant attachment styles, they have difficulty with empathy because they have a hard time connecting with their own emotions. And so for them to even say, hey, this isn't working out for whatever reason, to come up with that is a lot of emotional effort for them.
Yep.
Once again, not an excuse, right? We're not saying this is okay.
Yep.
We're not trying to justify anything. We're just trying to give some reasoning and context. One of the other things that we want to consider, because we're always trying to look at all different facets, is also social norms, right? So there could be arguably a stage in the beginning of dating. Let's say maybe you've just been talking a bit on a dating app. Let's say maybe you've been on one date where some people might not feel like they need to give an explanation to sever that connection.
At what point do you owe somebody an explanation without kind of thinking, well, they should assume that this is fading out. It wasn't quite going anywhere.
Right. So it might have just not been a strong enough of a connection, and you could probably ask a million people at what point is it okay to ghost, and at what point is it okay not to ghost, and you probably get a million different answers, right? And so you have to consider, is this somebody that you've been dating for a year and in an established relationship with that's ghosted you, or is this somebody that maybe you've met off, an app and have been talking to for a week? So of course there's levels, there's context to everything.
Sure. Now sometimes it is the things that we do, right? Sometimes we do come on too strong, and we have to be aware that people go at different paces. I mean, sometimes we've talked about videos where people are bringing their parents on first dates. And we're like, what? No. Right? So, yeah, those kind of things are going to come on too strong for people. And I've even seen people suggest it, but then they get it, and then they're like, no, that was too much. This was too much too soon. So, despite how strong they come on, be wary that they might scare themselves, okay? Sometimes they are interested in somebody else. Maybe you meet on a dating app and you're talking here and there for a couple weeks, but they were talking to somebody before you. And that's just further along in the dating process or the relationship. And so they don't want to tell you, I met somebody else, or I'm talking to somebody else, to hurt your feelings. So that's sometimes why they ghost you. Now, I'm not saying that it's okay to do this, but we're just trying to help you understand some of the things they might be going through.
Right.
Don't always take it personally. I know it's easy to take it personally, and sometimes we do want to look at our behavior. Sometimes we want to say, all right, was I coming on too strong? May I have done things that would have made numerous people upset, or is it just this person? You want to take things to consideration. We don't want to hold ourselves totally unaccountable, but at the same time, understand that many people do these things because of their own issues, and they don't like to communicate, and they don't want to hurt people. They don't have the wisdom or the clarity to explain things to you in a healthy way. And so it just makes for a complicated situation for them, so they just run.
Right. And just to bring up the woman's perspective, a lot of people talk to me because they want the woman's perspective, so we're going to give the woman's perspective. And so that is that there could be a fear of real consequences if somebody were to be direct. So now this is not in all cases, but there are certain cases where, people can become aggressive when they are rejected, right? And particularly it's men, who can be aggressive either verbally, sometimes in situations where there's stalking or, attacks that happen if somebody is rejected. So we just want to be conscious of that if, somebody is ghosting, a part of that might be for their own protection. We don't know. So.
I mean, how many times do you see those videos online where women are just walking down the street and guys are hitting on them, and the guy and the women are just like not interested, and the minute the man gets or feels rejected, he's like, oh, you this, you that, you loser, you're fat, you're ugly, all these awful things, because they feel hurt and rejected. So yeah, of course, why are they going to want to put themselves at that risk? Sometimes it's just better in their mind to just leave it alone and let you figure it out on your own.
Right. And so there definitely could be a safety component. And we've also, seen, I don't know if many of you have seen on the news, but more extreme cases of attacks happening when, certain men are rejected. And so we just want to be conscious of this, that this might be part of the dynamic, something to consider. And you might think, well, I'm not the type to get angry. I'm not going to attack anybody, right? But we're giving you just some context, some things to think about.
I saw a video on X the other day where these two women were sitting at the table and these guys came and sat down with them, and these women just asked these two guys to leave. They kept asking them to leave, and these guys refused to leave, and the woman was getting more and more and more and more upset and angry. Please leave, please go away. Like, it was clear as day. They had zero interest level, and instead of just getting up and walking away, they just continued to sit there and trying to like change these two women's mind. It was infuriating because I'm like, these guys have no emotional awareness. The women said, we're both in relationships. We are not interested in talking to you. Please go to another table. Please, like literally like this. And the guys were just still sitting there trying to ignore the women and just clueless.
Yeah.
So I could see why women are not going to want to say things to men, because a lot of times the men just don't take no for an answer.
Right. So you have to consider the other possible experiences that somebody might have had and just put that into the context. Try to be as understanding as you possibly can.
All I need is one no, and that's it. You won't hear from me ever again. And that's the healthy place to come from. If you're interested in someone and they say not interested, don't ever contact them again. If they're interested and they change their mind, they'll reach out to you. But respect yourself.
And respect others.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so thinking about things in a long-term kind of situation is a little bit different. So let's say you have been dating somebody for a while, and then you're hit with that shock of this person is not responding. This person now maybe has taken the stuff out of your apartment together in more extreme
brutal
situations. You know, this person has left without a trace, which this does happen, which is why we want to bring it up.
Yeah. Now, sometimes it has been because they have been feeling smothered. We want you guys to consider your behavior as well. We don't want to put the blame on somebody without maybe taking some accountability for yourself. If you do that, you're not going to really see the big picture. So they may have been feeling overwhelmed by you. You may have been double texting, triple texting, not taking no for an answer. Those things are going to overwhelm somebody. Think about when it's happened to you. I'm sure there's at least one person in your life that's been interested in you that you weren't so sure about. And the more they reached out to you, the more you were like, oh my gosh, enough. Please read the room. And so it's easy for people to overwhelm each other.
Exactly. So you have to consider these things. Consider your own behaviors. Sometimes avoidants can end up smothering themselves. This does happen. So they can put their own pressures, their own expectations, obligations, whatever they think that you expect onto themselves, and this can be very self-imposed. So this can look like a lot of, you know, hyper independence. Maybe they feel like they have to have some certain goals for themselves. This can be things that they think you expect to try to make you proud and happy in the relationship, and they put this pressure on themselves. And you might be thinking, I never asked for any of this. You know, you're doing this on your own. I didn't ask you to, you know, build the Great Wall of China here.
I know. And a big one that I hear them say is, I can't count on anyone. And it's hard for an avoidant to trust other people. And so when they feel like that, they feel like, why am I in this anyway? Because I can't even trust this person anyway. I can't really count on anybody else. So, like, why should I even stay in this situation? And so they start to kind of come up with their own reasons to end it. And they'll look for flaws in you. They'll go out of their way to look for reasons to leave, even if you were generally very good to them, because now they're just looking for an out, right? They just got to find something.
Yeah.
And so they're going to scrutinize tiny little things that you're going to be like, wait, you're breaking up with me because of what? Because you don't like my sneakers? Believe me, it's been said, right? Silly things that you're like, what? You can't even believe it that they would leave for those reasons. But it's because they are maybe feeling trapped, feeling stuck. Their anxiety is activated, and they just are, they're like a caged animal trying to get out. They're just looking for an escape.
Yep. And what happens to us when they back away? When they start to back away, then our anxiety kicks in, and boom, you're in that anxious avoidant trap, right? We try to repair, we try to fix, and they just continue to push back more and more and more until they finally end up feeling that loss once they're given that space. And so ghosting is a really tough situation. Once again, This video is not to justify it. If you're in a situation where somebody has ghosted you, do not reach out to them. Silence sometimes speaks very, very loudly, and I would take that as a response in itself.
Yep.
This person's unwilling to be clear and direct with me, and that's that.
And make no mistake, they very likely will contact you again if you stop reaching out to them. But you need to be careful, because you see how quickly they were able to leave the situation. So when they do that to you, and this is when you've worked through your own stuff, you can get to a place where you're not eager anymore. When you're so triggered and anxious to finally hear from them again that you're willing to do and say anything to get them back, it's not healthy. The dynamic is not healthy. They know they could mistreat you because you're tolerating being mistreated. You're not respecting yourself. So you got to be careful that even though they do feel the loss and will get there and reach out, you want to take it slow when repairing things and understand that, well, they ghosted me before, they could do it again.
Exactly. Ghosting affects your trust, right? So there's certain things that might be deal breakers for some of you. Ghosting might be on that list, right? If somebody's unable to clearly communicate with me what's going on, then that's it. And I can remember distinct moments in some of my relationships where I didn't hear from a partner for quite a while, right? And
15 years, I think, was the longest for you.
For quite a while, but you have to start considering for yourself, is this type of behavior acceptable, and what's the context? Sometimes there is something going on in their life to where you can say, you know what, I completely understand that. Maybe they're in some kind of shock. Maybe they had recently lost a loved one or are in a situation, a car accident, something unexpected happened that gets in the way of them communicating. But it's very different from a conscious choice of somebody deciding, I'm not going to directly tell this person what's going on because I fear the directness of it. I fear the conflict of it, or I fear the vulnerability of it. So consider those things.
It's a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully this is giving you some really good insight into why avoidants ghost people. Of course, if you want to get our help personally, you could do that on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Zoom. Coach Victoria is also available for Zoom calls.
I'm here whenever you'd like to chat.
Just click on her name at the top of the website to schedule with her. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.